Is everyone ready? Yes?
Yes.
Good afternoon. I'm Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, and I'm joined here by my friend Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Today, I'm here to provide an update to our community, a status on the investigation of the murder of Jazmine Barnes. Just 1 week ago today, Jasmine, her mother, and her siblings were fired upon as they drove along Beltway 8, the feeder road between Wallaceville and Wood Forest in East Harris County. From the very beginning of the investigation, we all have been touched by the death of Jasmine. Immediately, my team, the Harris County Sheriff's Office investigators, and some of our top leadership responded to that scene to make sure we did everything possible to solve this crime involving a precious child. We want to thank our community, our local community, for the outpouring of support and towards Jasmine and her family. I also want to thank key leaders such as Sean King, Attorney Lee Merritt, DeAndre Hopkins, Shaquille O'Neal, and countless others that have helped raise awareness to a national level. I also couldn't be more prouder of the work of the Harris County Sheriff's Office, especially our homicide investigators, our squad, for their tenacity and their steadfast commitment to resolving this crime. Also want to thank the many other partners that have helped us within the Sheriff's Office, including law enforcement and civilian personnel, and the amazing work of the Texas Department of Public Safety that have stood with us shoulder to shoulder working on this case, and we couldn't have a more valuable and effective partner. Being able to get to this point would not be possible without their help. We've also received the help of countless others here in local law enforcement, including constables such as Precinct 3, as well as HPD, as well as federal partners such as NASA and ATF. So again, I want to thank them very much. Through this process, we have received countless tips from many different sources. On Saturday, January 5th, the Harris County Sheriff's Office homicide investigators formally charged Eric Black Jr. with capital murder in the death of Jazmine Barnes. He became a target in our investigation based on a tip that initially went to journalist and activist Sean King. Mr. King then passed that tip to me personally. I myself became involved, working closely with our homicide team, making sure I was there to assist, either through vetting tips, giving a pat on the back, or just being present and helping them as needed. We were able to begin to corroborate the information that was provided and learn even more. This provided a little bit of a different angle, or a much different angle to what we were initially looking at. So we wanted to make sure that we were very thorough. And so this started to unfold just yesterday. Mr. Black has acknowledged his role in Jasmine's murder, and we've also received information that this involves a second individual as well. We are still trying to verify some information, and this investigation is ongoing. So there's still some work that needs to be done. We have been able, again, to verify some information, and so there's still some work to be done. I want to speak a little bit about some questions that I know have been circulating. One is, well, why the change? We were focused on first a description of an Anglo male, a pickup truck, and then eventually the composite that came up. We do know that there was a red truck involved. We know that they had come to a traffic signal near the Walmart. Both this red truck, the driver, and La Porsche and the family. At some point, as the traffic signal turns, they start going. We now believe that that red truck probably entered the freeway and continued on in another direction. We believe now that that red truck and the driver is most likely just a witness, either by sight or sound, to what actually transpired. We still want that individual to come forward because perhaps they could now shed some light. And so that is one question. We do not believe in any way that the family, again, we've said from the beginning that they've been involved in anything nefarious or anything. We feel they were truthful. This just went down very quickly when the gunfire erupted. You're talking about small children. They witnessed something very traumatic. And it's very likely that the last thing they did see was that, indeed, that red truck and that driver that was in that truck, and that's what they remembered last. But again, now we've been able to receive additional information to corroborate that it was other individuals involved. It appears to us, based on the information we received, this was likely a case of mistaken identity, where the intended targets were likely someone else, but instead they fired upon LaPortia, Jasmine, and her siblings in this case. I want to say as well that this death of Jasmine has sparked a lot of discussion on many different levels. And I think that it is good that going forward we continue to have positive dialogue on a number of issues. We know that there's important discussion that does need to take place about race, about the real fear and concerns that hate crimes are in an uptick across this country. We also need to talk about gun violence, and I'm very proud to serve on Mayor Sylvester Turner's commission against gun violence. We've done a lot of work through the course of all of last year under the chairmanship of Haley Carter as well. So I've been very involved in that process as well to see how we could diminish the gun violence. We also need to see what's going on in our urban communities as well, where many are gunned down and children are gunned down. There's a number of children that have been shot down in this region over this past year. Some were able to survive their injuries, others were not. And so I think going forward, it's good for us to have those positive dialogues. You know, for those out there committing violence upon anyone that would use guns to commit violence on anyone, put the guns down. Stop. Just stop. We do not need any senseless killings. We don't want any more families to have to suffer like this family is suffering. And so just put the guns down. And I want to say briefly in Spanish, estamos aquí para hablar sobre la investigación que ha pasado sobre la víctima Jazmine Barnes de 7 años. Pasó hace una semana, en este mismo día hace una semana. Hemos podido ponerle cargos de capital murder a Eric, perdón. Eric Black Jr., perdón. Le hemos puesto cargos de capital murder. Sabemos o tenemos información que hay una segunda persona que también está implicado en pero por el momento no tenemos esos detalles. Entonces vamos a seguir investigando. No podemos dar mucha información, pero vamos a estar investigando. Este es un resultado un poco diferente porque él es un afroamericano y inicialmente estamos buscando una persona anglosajón, una troca roja. Ahora pensamos de que esa troca sí estaba involucrada, pero no en una manera culpable, sino que iba por la carretera también y es muy posible que solamente es un testigo. Entonces queremos que esa persona se presente para tener más información sobre esa persona y qué tal vez escuchó o qué hablaron. Do we have any questions at this time?
The second individual of interest, are you looking for him or do you have him in custody and have questioned him?
I'll say that we've talked to a number of people from our perspective, still working on this. I'm not going to mention anyone by name that we have not yet charged. So I need to make sure that we're cautious with that because we want to maintain the integrity of this investigation. We're fairly certain there are 2 individuals involved. Again, I mentioned one of them, Mr. Eric Black Jr., and we believe very strongly there's a second one involved. We just need to be able to verify some information, so it's likely that charges are possible, but we're simply not there at this moment.
But you're not
Is
holding
it fair to say the second individual is African American as well? That doesn't fit the initial suspect?
Yes, it's accurate to say.
But is that person in custody right now?
Have they been arrested?
Is that person in custody right now?
I'm not gonna mention that because we have not charged anyone else, so I cannot say that at this time.
Now,
Is
sir,
he
you
in
said
custody
that
on drug charges
Eric
right
Black
now?
Jr. know the family by any
chance anyone in the
To our knowledge, they do not know the family. Again, we continue to hold that this is most likely a case of mistaken identity. We don't know of any linkages to the family or not. They continue to be innocent in all of this.
Sir, when
And
you
Sheriff,
say
have you
mistaken,
recovered- Sheriff, have investigators recovered a weapon?
I'll just say that we've recovered evidence to continue to corroborate all the information we've received. So we definitely feel we're in a good place at this time. But our work still continues to be able to continue to verify and develop other information at this time. That's why we're not yet at a position to say that this is completely done.
And if I may, it sounds like it was one critical tip that really changed the course of this investigation. If you had not received that tip, where do you think this investigation would be today?
Well, in hindsight, as you could see, the initial information that we have was obviously not consistent with what the final outcome was. So, we were still searching in a different direction. So this tip obviously was very crucial. And so I want to thank, again, Sean King for his activism and help and raising awareness and the monies that were put forward to be able to generate those calls. And again, I was personally involved with him to make sure that we worked through this, as was my commitment that I said we would not rest until we found justice for Jasmine. And so I want to thank him to helping us generate some leads as well. And also our Crime Stoppers affiliate here locally that we work with on a daily basis for helping generate a lot of calls as well. Like I said earlier, we receive calls from many different sources.
now, so you
Sure.
called this a case
You
of
give us a
mistaken
clue.
identity. Do you know, or have the suspect said who the intended target was? Do you know who you believe that would be, and how did the family get caught up in this?
We're still trying to develop who the likely targets were. We don't have that information, and I want to emphasize I'm saying likely because we still need to verify some things. We're just saying most likely just because I know motive has really been a topic of discussion. The information that we have is that that's most likely what we're getting here. And we've been able to corroborate some of that. I'll just leave it at that. The family was just traveling down the roadway, as they mentioned they were. I mean, just that early morning. And also just speaking a little bit about maybe some of the confusion on what happened. It was still dark at that time. Sun didn't start to rise until about 7:16 a.m. that morning. So it was still dark when all this was happening. So there were a lot of different facets that could potentially impact someone's memory of what they saw at that time. At that
Could it
early
be
morning.
an
related?
argument and the suspect went looking for somebody to retaliate against, or?
We're still trying to verify some information, going back to the motive and possible, like what you're mentioning, that it could possibly be a case of mistaken identity.
That it
But
was like he
but
was
but
aiming
but
for
to
the
that
car,
point,
not-
with that point now, with this new information, what we do hope is that somebody out there could still give us a call to tighten up some of that information, because I can't quite verify it yet. And so we're still asking for the public to call us at 713-221-6000 or Crime Stoppers at 713-222-TIPS, so we could find out and determine if they can, give us additional information now on Eric Black Jr., some of the associates, some of the other individuals that could possibly be involved.
Can you say
Sure.
whether Eric
Sure.
Black was the gunman or the driver?
If I could ask a question, you said it was still dark at that time, and I believe there was some fog out there as well. And so that raises the question of how the description of the suspect at that time, is a man in his 30s and 40s, beard, no beard, blue eyes, how that could have been possible given the conditions of darkness.
Yeah, well, a couple things. Remember that I mentioned that there was indeed a red truck at the stoplight, so there is a pause there and an opportunity and time to look at, who's positioned next. Again, these were also young children in the car, and so it's a combination of things. Again, I'm not going to question it. I think it was sincere information that came forward. There was no nefarious motive to give a different description. Everything went really fast when it started to unfold, and perhaps that's just the last thing that they remember prior to the mayhem and the chaos. And so, again, we sometimes we don't always get the most clear and best information up front for those reasons. And so we want to just say that may have been a possible reason why.
And could I follow up with one thing? In the early days, the term hate crime, that was a suspicion on the part of a lot of people. Is that off the table now?
But yeah, at this point, I would say again that we're still, again, I want to just preface it by saying I've tried to be cautious from the beginning on this, and I'll say it again. It appears to be a crime of just a case of mistaken identity, but we're still asking. As I said, there's still an ongoing investigation. So if anybody has any information out there, please call us, especially as now that this new information that's becoming public. And so again, we want to know if there's something else that we're missing in this. But at this point, again, it does not appear that it was related to race.
When did you receive the tip? To tighten up the timeline a little bit, were you guys still working on the red truck theory up until yesterday? Were you looking at other things already, or did this one tip turn everything around? And can you
Well,
give us a
again,
better
we
timeline?
received a lot of tips throughout the week. I think over 1,000 different tips, and many, some was a lot of duplication because they kept
People
pointing
see
at
the red
certain,
truck on
they
Craigslist
kept
sending
pointing
calls.
at some of the same things that were circulating around social media, so we were getting a lot of those calls. And so it was about trying to track that down. We had not really been able to fully move away from the Anglo-male red truck discussion. So as we got that one, it did provide a little bit of a different angle, so it did require even more, just kind of more review, more diligence and thoroughness on our part amongst everything else we were trying to track down. We were out in the field. We were out canvassing, trying to track that video. And so it was just a lot going on. And so this kind of developed.
Did you get that yesterday?
No. We did. We started getting some information, I would say, in the last 2 days on that, maybe approximately.
So like Friday, maybe?
Yeah, maybe around, And so, but it wasn't anything we could yet corroborate. So little by little we began.
And the initial tips came from Sean King's tipster?
Correct, from that, even though we were getting sources
And
from
what
all
date
over.
was that?
I don't remember the exact day.
But
It was
Friday?
middle week, no.
Middle of the week?
Yeah, middle week, but we had some very basic information. And it just didn't quite gel at the time, but it was through the follow-up work that we started to then develop that tip more. And it really came to a head yesterday, and pieces started falling together very rapidly.
And can you talk a little bit, do you know, there was some talk in the PC appearance by this individual about how you found like his Instagram account and that tracing. Can you talk a little bit about how that social media worked into that? Well,
Yeah.
I mean, they talked about it in court. So.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll let the DA's office talk about what they want to release on their side, because we do have the prosecution side of things. And again, this is still ongoing investigation. So from our standpoint, I don't want to necessarily get into everything. We were using to corroborate and confirm information and verify. But I do just want to say that we continued to develop that lead as this went on, as we pursued others as well. And everything just started to fall into place. And we got the corroboration we needed to feel certain that we were now on the right track.
And
Sheriff,
there
I
are
wanna
many
ask
things,
you-
I just want to clarify.
I want to ask you more about the
Facebook.
suspects.
There's been a lot of people, as you know, social media talking about this. Today, after all this information came out, there was some talk about perhaps that the mother was Facebook friends with a guy by this name, by the name Eric. Is that like a false thing?
I have not heard any of that.
Okay.
I have not heard any
Sheriff,
of
I
that.
want to ask you more about the suspects. What kind of car were they driving at the time, and do we know who fired the gun and how many shots were fired?
The only thing we have at this point is on Eric Black Jr. That's the only person that we're talking about, because we're still developing additional information. We do believe there is a second one that was involved in this incident. And so at this point, because we're still working on that, there are no formal charges on that person, but there still could be charges filed in this case.
What about the
Did
vehicle?
he the
At
shooter?
any point, when and where was this suspect apprehended, and when you spoke to him, did he show any remorse?
He was arrested yesterday afternoon out in East Harris County. All of them are connected out in East Harris County. The focus of our investigation so far. And so I did not personally interview him and all that, so I can't speak to
Did an
remorse.
investigator at any point ever convey to you that he expressed remorse?
We didn't talk about that.
Is there any
About-
indication that he is in a gang? Is it any way that he was
Yeah.
trying to target somebody else that was in a gang?
I personally can't talk about that. If that becomes apparent, or our investigators could give us that information here going forward, we'll mention that. I've heard some of that discussion, but I personally don't have knowledge of gang affiliation.
Sheriff, you
Sarah,
said
I
you
wanna
to members of the
clarify.
community
Go ahead.
who are, you had talked about the relationship with the community and how that played a role in this case. the tips that were brought forward, but any message to people who are skeptical that that you've got the right people because they're black and the suspect description was white, people who maybe don't trust the police?
I feel very comfortable with where we're at. We're going to be very thorough and make sure that we're not charging anyone that doesn't have the necessary probable cause and information that we need to corroborate. Again, we were very thorough in making sure we did that and not rush to any conclusions. And we've been able to corroborate information, develop evidence throughout this process to where we feel very comfortable. And again, I personally have been involved in this investigation, assisting my team as needed. They've done all the work that I've been there to support. I've been personally involved helping vet information and tips and things like that myself. So I feel very comfortable, and I know firsthand how this investigation has kind of unfolded. So I feel very comfortable that we're on point right now.
Sheriff, prosecutor said that on December.
¿Alguien va a obtener la recompensa en este caso?
Eso es algo que viene por Sean King. She was asking about the reward. That's something that Sean King was obviously coordinating in terms of the reward that they posted. So.
¿Has hablado con la familia? ¿Han dicho algo respecto a esta situación?
Hemos hablado con familiares y están agradecidos. We've spoken to some of the family members, and they're obviously appreciative of where things are right now. And our condolences are with them. And, we continue to send prayers for Jasmine. Sí hemos hablado con los familiares y están muy agradecidos con donde estamos en este proceso en este momento.
Did they
Sir,
say
you said that Eric Smith acknowledged his role. Was it as driver, shooter, or both?
Eric Black Jr. has acknowledged his role because there's still a potential for filing a charge as someone else. I'm not going to speak to the specificity, at least I'm not, on what that role was, because we still need to tighten up and verify some things from others, and we're interviewing other people. We have interviewed some others on this case, but we need to verify information. I'm simply not going to state who those names are.
Sir, prosecutors said that
What were
too.
some of the initial elements of this case that led to the suspicion that this could possibly be a hate crime? What were those?
Well, again, I think that some time ago there was an incident where that became high profile at that time. It was around the time of Harvey, where a black male had been shot, and it was suspected that the gunman at that incident was an Anglo male. And while it was not exactly there at the Walmart per se, it happened about 6 miles away. Eventually they drove there seeking help and came to a stop there. So just from proximity to the region. And we had done some follow-up work on that particular case after it was brought to our attention of some, the need for more follow-up investigation. We did it at the time. I spoke to the investigator at the start of the week this week, and we continue to look into the case even further. As I said in one of the press conferences, that we would make sure we looked into that to address that concern, but we at that time did not see any linkages to this particular crime.
So, sir, prosecutors said on December 31st that is when the tip came in. Why did it take from then until now for the update on the
31st?
Suspects to be
updated? I didn't enter that charge information. I don't remember it being on the 31st. And again, it could have come in, but we received over 1,000 tips. And so, it needed to be consistent with. So I didn't enter the charge information, so I don't know what's there. It would be, I couldn't comment to the date or what was written.
While you say you won't specify Eric Black's role, can you say with confidence that you believe you have in your custody the man who pulled the trigger on the gun that killed Jazmine Barnes?
Well, you're talking back to his role in it. I'll just say he admitted to being involved in this shooting incident.
But do you believe you have the person
Yes.
in your custody
Yes.
who was responsible
One of the individuals responsible. Yes.
for pulling the trigger on the gun?
I'm not going to talk about their roles. I'm sorry.
Sheriff, I know you addressed in Spanish briefly, on the issue of the reward, since it was not done through Crime Stoppers or your office, it was a lot of money. I'm sure that probably played a role in help itself as well. Do you have no role in administering who might get that reward? How much
We never administer rewards. That's something that, Mr. King,
and his people?
announced. And so, that's through their process. And so, they handle that aspect of it. We don't handle Crime Stoppers either. Crime Stoppers handles their own whenever it comes through them.
And as far as no one is eligible for the Crime Stoppers reward, is that correct?
this point?
At this point, no. We're still trying to generate new leads about now this aspect of the investigation. So we're encouraging folks to call our Crime Stoppers affiliate here at 713-222-TIPS. But that particular tip came through one of the many tips that were obtained through Mr. King.
Sir, is there surveillance video of the shooting?
We're still going through a lot of video. I don't know of any video that we do or don't have about the specific, but we're going through a lot of different video, and these new developments, we're looking at new aspects of it as
And
well.
did the suspect say why he was in the area at that time?
They reside out in the area.
So they live near there.
They're out there. Everyone we've talked to so far is from the greater East Harris County.
So they didn't say where.
There's a picture out there circulating right now of the second suspect with a name out there. Are you confident in telling the public that that's the guy? Is that the guy, the second suspect? Or
yeah.
should the public be helping you track someone down who's responsible for shooting this little girl?
We'll provide more information as we can. I mean, at this point, I just don't think it's prudent on my part to mention someone by name that we have not formally charged with a serious crime of capital murder. There's a lot of things I would like to say, but look, having been a former investigator myself and talking to our investigative team, I just don't feel that at this point today we can say that when we have a few loose ends to tighten up. But I have said that it's very likely that more charges will be forthcoming in this.
But can you say
And
this
so,
person is off the street?
Would you say it's fair as you're-
I can't say that.
You're not actively out there looking for like 3 more people that could have been driving the car.
Yeah,
or
at
being
this
involved.
point, again, we feel comfortable where we're at the investigation. We're still asking for folks that could maybe give us more information on who, or on who or what this second person could be or have done in this shooting incident. I mean, I've got to parse words a little bit, simply because, again, I want to be respectful of the process and an individual that has not been formally charged. And that's difficult sometimes to do in a forum like this, but I simply cannot, other than confirm, and it's a good thing that we have formally charged Eric Black Jr. As being involved in the shooting of Jazmine Barnes.
So, sir, the man in the red truck, do you still want him to come forward? Are you still looking to question that person?
I'm sorry?
The man in the red truck, are you still?
Yes, we would still like to identify the person in the red truck that was driving that morning. We now believe they were most likely just going to be a witness to it, either by sight or sound, may have heard something because they were at that light and maybe something will jog their memory. And I also feel compelled, I'll say it in English, but we also have a large, diverse immigrant community here in our region, and many times they're afraid to come forward for a number of reasons. And so we want to make sure that they can rest assured that they can contact us. They can call Crime Stoppers and remain anonymous and give us information if they were driving to work or from work. We want to know. A la comunidad inmigrante queremos que sepan que necesitamos apoyo si saben o si ustedes estaban conduciendo esa troca roja que se ha visto mucho esta semana y tal vez iban manejando al trabajo, regresando al trabajo, por favor no teman y comuníquense con nosotros. And again, want to just thank everybody for all the local media, national media as well that's been here reporting on this, to really keep this at the forefront, and just want to thank everyone so much. I want to thank Pastor Deckard as well, that was at the very beginning assisting the family and stuff. I know it's a large family. Our focus has been on trying to resolve the case, and frankly, within a week's time frame, considering where we kind of started, I think it's been phenomenal work on the part of our Harris County Sheriff's Office investigators and personnel. So just very thankful to all of them and to all the public for their support. We know many of them remain confident in our efforts to be able to bring this to a closure, and ironically, it's on the 1-week anniversary where we're able to make this significant announcement. And want to thank you all. I do want to provide an opportunity to Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee. Thank you for being patient and standing up here. And she wanted to say a few words.
First of all, Sheriff, thank you so very much for having us in your home here, and thank you to your department, to all of the local law enforcement and federal authorities that have been engaged. Let me start by saying that I asked the family to recognize the outpouring of love and affection that has been given across the nation. I noticed pastors are here, I want to officially thank all of the pastors that are here. I can't call each of them by name, but I saw pastors, and I want to thank them for surrounding the family. A young mother lost her daughter. A young father who is here in the room lost his daughter. This was a tragic and enormous event that impacted their family and their extended family. I think it is important to take note that this community suspected it was someone that did not look like them and that it might have been a hate crime. But throughout the entire week, they listened to the process of law and order, and they supported the sheriff and all of the law enforcement in their efforts. That should be the story going from this county and this city. That Jasmine's life was so important that no one tried to take the law in their own hands. The beauty of this precious child was too important. And the amazing showing of 1,000+ individuals of varying backgrounds, races, color and creed, and religion was evidence of that respect and that love for her. Now, I am comforted by the fact that we're not finished with this investigation, that it is ongoing. And I certainly hope that people would accept the fear that that young mother experienced, having sat down at her bedside and listened to her story. And for you all to realize that in that car was a 13-year-old, a 15-year-old, a 6-year-old, and an almost 8-year-old, which was Jasmine. Those were children experiencing probably the deepest fear that they had ever experienced. They did the best they could to give to law enforcement as exact a rendering as they thought that they saw. I am glad there were many tips. And the one thing I think is important as relates to communities who live sometimes amongst violence and gun violence, as the sheriff has indicated, I think it is important to note that this community, and there will be many voices, will certainly not be any less intense on the perpetrator being brought to justice, irrespective of the race of that person. I do want to thank the Department of Justice that I engage with and ready to answer any calls to come from local government and their consideration if this went further for helping as a task force. I want to thank ATF. I want to thank the existence of a database that was and could have been made available to this local team for anyone who had any tendencies that they would need to review. And then I think it is important to, again, emphasize to the faith community that we must continue to pray and embrace this family as they funeralize Jasmine, that peace will not only be brought to them, but be brought to the community. No person of a different color was attacked. No person was confronted because of this pictorial picture of a possible perpetrator. That is an important statement to be made. We did not divide over the fact of what many thought this was. And I think we will come to closure when the sheriff and other law enforcement officials working with him and his detectives should be applauded, come to their final resolution as to what this is. And that the community comes together around a stop sign of stopping the violence, stopping the gun violence. So I am very grateful to the sheriff. We have committed to working together on potential federal efforts to help him in what he faces. Sheriff, I know there are pastors here. I just want to applaud them.
Yes.
I also want to acknowledge that I think they want to give information about where the funeral is. Pastor Dixon, wanted to give information about where the funeral was and Pastor Deckard. And I would yield to them to give information where the funeral is going to be. The other pastors that are here. So let me just simply say, I'll certainly take individual questions, but I wanted to say to the sheriff, I thank you for engaging my office and recognizing that this had become a national concern. It will still be a national concern. And that I thought it was important that the national voice be heard, that we were serious here in Houston about ensuring that anyone who might have been going after any child was not the norm in Houston and Harris County. And I think we evidenced that by the collective voice of community, pastors, and the 1,000+ persons who I personally thank who were out yesterday in a Walmart simply to say, we care about Jasmine, and we care about the family, and we care about children. And we should never be fearful of sticking our neck out on behalf of children. Thank you. Pastors.
Open up by saying thank you, Sheriff Gonzalez, for your consistency. Thank you, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, for your faithfulness and dedication. And I want to say the objective from day one was to make sure that the justice for Jasmine was served, and now justice is being served. So I'll be very brief. There's one announcement we will make. The funeral arrangements has been relocated to better serve the family and the community. The funeral will be held this Tuesday, viewing from 10 to 12, funeral at 12 noon at Community of Faith, 1024 Pinemont, under the leadership of Bishop James Dixon. And also I'm glad and proud to be standing here today with Bishop Ursher, who will also be officiating the funeral. He's the pastor of Chris, the father. So I'm going to take a stand back, and Bishop Dixon will come now and give further instructions and directions for the funeral service on this Tuesday, 10 a.m. viewing, 12 noon, the funeral. Let's now hear from Bishop Dixon.
Thank you, Sheriff Gonzalez, and to our Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, both of whom have been working 24/7 in regards to this crisis, and certainly to Pastor Deckard as well, working tirelessly, and to Bishop L. Usher, Terrence as well, these pastors. We are blessed in this city to have the kind of collegial relationships between pastors and law enforcement and elected officials, where we all really work together, we cry together, we pray together, we serve together, and sacrifice together. And moments like these, we come together in order to mend and heal broken hearts. We thank God for that. Today, my grief is beyond measure. I'm a father. I have children. And I cannot imagine the grief of this father, this mother, and others, the loss of this 7-year-old child. We're here to simply say we're here to serve. And as Pastor Deckard indicated, we will host a service on Tuesday. But I want to implore our community, both locally and nationally, to have the conversation with all of our young people about the sanctity of life, the value of human life. This is one person was not lost, many are lost, and we're hoping that the grief of this moment will be turned into power as we serve to make our neighborhoods and our communities safer for all children across this nation, make the world a safer place for every child. And that's what our message is, and we're hoping that we can convey that with the utmost of strength and sincerity. Bishop L. Usher has been working with his father and his family, and we would like to have him to have a brief word before things come to conclusion. But we're looking forward to serving this family with dignity and the grace that they are so well deserving of.
Thank you. Well, basically, on behalf of the family, and Chris, he wants to tell everyone thank you for your prayers, your support, and all the work that have been put forth thus far. We ask that you continue to pray for the family as they put Jasmine to rest. And so we're asking that you continue to pray because your prayers have worked. Thank you.
Amen.
Congresswoman, one question for you. Do you feel it was irresponsible at all to suggest that this was a hate crime when we didn't have all the facts?
Absolutely not. Nothing is irresponsible when it comes to the loss of a precious 7 or 8-year-old. And as many in the community did, they expressed that it might be, it seems to have the criteria of that, which is why I emphasize that the intensity of the community is no less, because the perpetrator has been found to be something other than. But the idea of the question of race has been stated by Bishop Dixon and others that we should engage in that discussion, because it would be the kind of thing that lends itself to thinking if this description came in however way from a frightened car full of young girls, baby girls, and their frightened mother. And so the good thing was that in the comments that were made, there was no hysteria, there was no encouraging individuals to go out and find that person. It was nothing but orderly respect for the rule of law, allowing our law enforcement to be able to do their tasks, and then now to call for an understanding that any violence against a child should not be the norm, and that we should stand up against all violence. I believe this individual that is now one of the alleged perpetrators was born in 1998. That's a 20-year-old, barely. We should not want to suffer any kind of actions by children and young men or young women that would create this violent act and this tragic, horrific death. I'm engaged because my stomach and my heart were turned upside down. Wanted to bring comfort to a mother in her bed as I sat by her side, to listen to her pain and her description of the red truck. But it didn't cause me to go out and call for an immediate outpouring of rage of the community. It was simply to say, let law enforcement from the sheriff's office, the police department, constables, and yes, the Department of Justice, be as helpful as they could possibly be. I think we did that, and I think all good Houstonians will frankly welcome the engagement and the discussion that is so needed. And hopefully all good Houstonians and Harris Countyans will rally around law enforcement to find a way to stop senseless violence and senseless gun violence. That is the story we should take away, and as well the story that the community came together and showed no anger toward law enforcement and no anger toward anybody that was different from them. You should have seen the body of people who were from all walks of life and did not feel intimidated by anyone mentioning what it might be. That's a blessing. And so I started by saying I asked the community to pray for this family, this father, this mother, pray for this sheriff department. This happens to be the weekend of worship. People worship on different days. And so I'm asking them to pray for this family, this community, and it's wonderful to have a sheriff who's willing to engage in a dialogue about violence, about hate, about guns, and we have that along with the chief of our law enforcement, the mayor of our city, and certainly I want to acknowledge that the office of Commissioner Rodney Ellis is represented here. He represents the sheriff and the sheriff's department, and we are going to be working closely together between federal and county, state and city on new laws that are going to hopefully, new funding that's going to hopefully help in many of the issues that the sheriff has to face. So we thank you, and I was glad to be part of the effort. Thank you very much. Did I answer your question, sir? Thank you.
Can I ask one question, though? And I understand, as you said, there was no retaliation, there was no violence, but do you think this created an undercurrent of racial tension?
Absolutely not. I have not had any confrontations of anybody that was involved in the rally, none from the family members. I remember the words of the mother. She just said, find that person. She mentioned nothing about anything. All of us, we mentioned nothing about race. She said, find that person. I hope this is a door opener, frankly, for the fears and apprehension of mothers and fathers concerned about their children and guns. And I hope this is a door opener to the faith we have in law enforcement and the fact that they are, in fact, here to protect us.
Thank you, everyone.
Is this his phone?
Sheriff,